It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Jeff Mosher and this man, Adam Caplan, is here as the Eagles continuing today. Nick Sirianni, Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata, some interesting stuff from them. They have signed Devonta Smith to an interesting guaranteed there. Lot of guaranteed money for their first-round pick, Devonta Smith. He got a big deal today, so he is signed, sealed, and delivered. What does it all mean? We got a lot to discuss with Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning. What's going on, Adam?
Mike, good to talk to you. Yeah, with the Devonta Smith deal, it's a standard deal. It has to be by the CBA, so there's nothing interesting in terms of guarantees. It has to be fully guaranteed. That's the way the structure is, with a fifth-year option, by the way. Which is very important to note because second-rounders like Dallas Goedert don't have a fifth-year option. That's why he's on the last year of his deal here, and the Eagles don't have that luxury of using a fifth-year option. We'll talk about his situation. But, yeah, good to talk to you here. So, yeah, the OTAs are going on here. Remember, we have restructured OTAs. The Eagles coaches had an agreement with the players. There's no mandatory camp. There's no 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, but they are still getting on-the-field work time with the coaches.
Yeah, which is nice to see them out there. It's nice to kind of have some football back, a little bit of normalcy. They didn't have this last year, right? And that's something
nothing.
Yeah, they had nothing.
Yeah.
And that is something that, each guy handles it differently, I guess. I mean, like Justin Jefferson, well, I didn't have any, and I had 1,400 yards. Jalen Reagor, well, I didn't have any. Well, he didn't have such a good. Maybe Reagor needed it, Jefferson didn't.
Right, but let's not forget Reagor had two separate injuries. He had a more significant shoulder injury, I think people really knew, but he was able to play through it. And then he broke his thumb after he came back. So, look, that set him back. The issues going at quarterback. Whereas you look at Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, the one thing you could say about Kirk Cousins is he's durable. He doesn't miss time. He's not the most consistent quarterback. He's a better than average quarterback, not special, but Justin Jefferson developed great timing with Kirk Cousins. And here now, with Jalen Hurts being the quarterback for the Eagles, now Hurts has got to get chemistry going with all his pass targets.
Well, let's get into that. Let's kind of dive into this quarterback situation that Philadelphia has and how much the offense will change, from what we saw from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts. And obviously you got a new play caller, you got a new play designer, but you also have a new style of quarterback.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because it's something that we failed on Inside the Birds to talk about a lot. It's probably the one thing at quarterback we haven't discussed much. How will the play calling change? Schematically, we know what's coming here. We've outlined this since February, but what a lot of people have not talked about is how, with Carson Wentz, yes, you ran some RPOs. He was a scrambling quarterback. Back in 2017, he was way more athletic than he would be later on after the series of injuries, knee injury, back injury, and so forth. With Jalen Hurts, he's a dual-threat quarterback. He can beat you with his arm and his leg. So I do believe not only will you see RPOs here, you'll see design runs for him. That's something that I do think we're going to see. And he is really good. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not a big guy like Wentz. He's 6'1", but 220, pretty strong physically. And he can run. There's no question about it. He did it a lot at Alabama. That's what but the thing that some coaches told me who graded his tape from Alabama, he did take a lot of hits. Now, because this is his first year starting, and it's been a while since he's been hit, the good thing, he's coming in healthy. He's coming in as the starting quarterback. I know that there's going to be a competition, so to speak, in training camp. Wink, wink. We know it's going to be starting. It's going to be Hurts over Joe Flacco. And then also, by the way, they've got Jamie Newman. They've got three quarterbacks on the roster. They really have not been able to develop, Mike, that third-stringer quarterback. They missed on Clayton Thorson, the fifth rounder in 2009. I know that was the guy they wanted to develop as that third quarterback, potentially the backup quarterback for Wentz. And now both of those quarterbacks are not on the football team.
You mentioned, Adam, about running and how much, that Hurts is a guy that ran. Wentz was a guy who ran a lot early, and then he got the knee injury, and he kind of got that out of his system almost. That's not something they wanted to do so much after the knee injury, it seemed like. And there's always those questions, like, is he thinking about it too much? Is he not taking off because of them telling him not to take off. I think that was a very, kind of interesting dynamic for Wentz after he had that knee problem, because what made him so dynamic previous to the knee injury was that he would take off. He would be a little bit more active with his feet.
Well, what he was able to do, and we can go back to that Monday night game, I call it the rugby scrum, where against Washington on a Monday night, you saw how special Wentz was. It was one of these plays where I don't know how in the heck he got out of that. He looked like he was going down, and it looked like a rugby scrum, and somehow he came out of it, and he ran and made a great play. And this is what made Wentz special back in 2017 before the knee injury. But they didn't design plays for him to run. It was rare that they did that.
Right.
But with Hurts, you're going to see that because he's a very interesting guy, on his feet. So that's something that we've really not talked about enough. How that it'll change by play calling too, because Hurts will like certain throws, or Wentz likes certain throws. These are the kind of things that we're going to be looking for in training camp. Because remember here, you're not having real competition because we can't have the teamwork, the 7-on-7, 11-on-11s. So I'm really looking forward, Mike, once we get to training camp. And remember, the coaches, the Eagles training camp starts a week before the returning coaches do from other teams, because they get that advantage of being a new coaching staff.
Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course, Dallas Goedert negotiating an extension here. Number one, he could be a free agent next year. He doesn't have to do anything. Does he want to stay here? I mean, is this something that he wants to sign now, or kind of wait and see what happens here? So kind of give us some insight on the way that maybe Goddard's thinking about this extension after seeing what the previous tight end's gone through.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is a really complicated situation. Jeff Mosher and I on our show this morning, but we did a super deep dive. We really went into it on both sides. Over the past year, we've kind of looked at both sides of the equation of what the Eagles are looking at and what the player and the agent are looking at. It's very complicated because we're talking about Zach Ertz first, and we'll get to Goddard. The Ertz situation and what happened last summer, Mike, is they were in deep extension talks for Ertz's contract, and they had a disagreement on the guaranteed money for 2022. The Eagles weren't going to give him any guaranteed money for 2022 because they knew Goddard was the future tight end. And that was Ertz's hang-up on it. And remember, Zach did right by the club. He did 4 restructures. And he didn't have to do it. You could always turn a team down. That's not a responsibility, but he did it. He did right by the team. And he was hoping to get a contract that would help him at least come close to ending his career as an Eagle. And that's not going to happen. So now we fast forward the situation. The Eagles were very open to moving him, had talks with other teams before the draft, couldn't get anything done. Now we're here. And we know, Mike, once you get past the draft, there's very little urgency for teams to make trades, because what happens is teams fill out their needs for that particular position. In this case, it's tight end. So now you fast forward here. We're in the first week of June. And while some teams with those June 1 designations got extra cap space, that doesn't mean anything in terms of Zach Ertz's situation. If a team didn't think they like Ertz, other teams like Ertz, but they weren't going to pay him $8.5 million this season, it doesn't matter how much cap space they have. That doesn't match up to $8.5 million paying him. So he's still an Eagle right now, and that does play into Goddard's extension, because this is what we were talking about on our show this morning. It's very hard to keep Ertz on the contract under contract for now, pay him $8.5 million. Oh, by the way, extend Goddard's contract. It's just very rare, and we would have to look back at the only time I can remember was 2 tight ends getting paid a lot of money under contract was Aaron Hernandez and Robert Gronkowski before the Hernandez stuff off the field hit.
So what does this kind of mean for Ertz moving forward now? I mean, he's still here. If the Eagles clear him, they're going to get some cap space, I mean, that they obviously can use to improve other areas of this team. So obviously they still want to try to get rid of this contract, right? So what does this mean for Ertz now?
Yeah, so Mike, the situation is this. The Eagles, and we've said this for 2 months on Inside the Birds. From everything we've heard, they're going to cut him. They want compensation for him. They're not going to trade him for like a 6th-round pick. 4th would absolutely do it. 5th, I don't know about. I'm not sure if a 5th would do it. They can only answer that question. Right now, he's still on the roster. I mean, I have a hard time, like everyone, seeing him on the roster this fall, but you can't dismiss that because, again, we've gotten past the draft. No one's expecting him to be an Eagle past the draft. He is. So now that you have him, it complicates extending Goedert's contract because you have to figure out how you're going to pay that. It'd be very uncomfortable. I mean, I thought Mosher put it very well. It doesn't make any sense to keep Ertz on the contract for the season. And as you said, Mike, killing up $8.5 million would help them as well. It's a little bit of a fluid situation here at tight end for these two guys. Goddard's the future at tight end. I mean, everybody knows this.
Yeah.
The question is, can they move Ertz? And right now, they still have him on the roster because Eagles want something for him that's fair. And there's not a team that's stepping up right now, giving what the Eagles want and also willing to pay him $8.5 million.
Adam, if he's still on the roster at the mandatories, does he show up or take the fine?
That's a great question. And by the way, by the new CBA, you have to fine him. You can't rescind the fines. So, by the way, there's no mandatory camp for the Eagles. If you recall, the Eagles through the –
That's right.
Because remember, the Eagles were one of the teams who was only going to show up to the mandatory camp. And then in their new agreement with the players, they're ditching the 3-day mandatory camp.
That's right.
So I don't know how that – right now, there's no mandatory camp for this football team. So barring something that I'm not aware of, that won't matter. What matters is the training camp. He's got to show up because those fines, they accumulate. The new CBA becomes if you're not showing up through training camp, it's in the millions instead of the tens of thousands. So obviously he'd have to show up. That would force the Eagles' hand, Mike, because you know what? There's no guaranteed money in his contract. If he would show up and he would suffer an injury during a practice, would keep him out for the season, they can't cut him.
Right.
They'd be on the hook for that money.
Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. So you got, let's say Ertz is not here when the season starts. You got Dallas Goedert and I don't. This is so what's
funny,
worse, the guy playing? What's worse, the guy playing opposite Darius Slay or the backup tight end right now?
I'll take the opposite Darius Slay because at least Zach McPherson could do something. They traded for the kid from Jacksonville. So look, they're both bad. It's so funny
Scott,
you put it that
by the way. Josiah Scott.
I'm sorry, Josiah Scott. Right. So let's look at that, okay, before we move on to the next issue. You got Jason Kroom, who's a slot tight end. Caleb Wilson, a slot tight end. They can't block. Forget about it. Tyree Jackson is a former quarterback from University of Buffalo. He's trying to learn like Logan Thomas did. Took Logan Thomas several years to figure it out, but he's trying to do what Logan Thomas did. Inaccurate quarterback, big guy, long, 6'6", 6'7", trying to play tight end. It's going to take him years to figure that out. He might be a practice squad guy. Keem Butler, former receiver. He was what they called a jumbo receiver. Doesn't run very well. Runs good for a tight end, but he doesn't run well for a receiver. So he's trying out, as you saw him last year, trying to play tight end. He actually, as we know, dressed for a game or two.
Yeah, and got a throw in the back of the end zone in a key spot.
Right, he stood there. But here's the thing, though, Mike. Literally, you could have stood there to catch that ball. Nobody covered him. They forgot to cover him. Jack Stoll is a guy they're very high on, his undrafted tight end from it's more of a hybrid. He might be H-back. He might be tight end. He can block, by the way. He's an undrafted free agent. I give him a real shot to be their third tight end this season.
Yeah, it's Stoll from Nebraska. Yeah, I would agree. Yep. So how many do they keep? I mean, should they keep? Do they normally keep here? Is it two guys? Richard Rodgers is still out there. I guess everybody's just imagining, all right, you hang out there, we'll trade Ertz, and then we'll sign you.
Honestly, that's a scenario that's very plausible. Most teams keep 3, some keep 4. If you're a running team, you're going to keep 4. Like Detroit will keep almost the Lions, who are going to really become a run team under Dan Campbell and Anthony Lynn. They'll probably keep 4. Where the Eagles will be more of a balanced team. I would say they would keep 3. Goedert, Richard Rodgers. Once they trade, if and when they trade Ertz, you can't dismiss him playing the season here. Odds are against it, but I'm not ruling it out at this point because, again, knowing the way it works, once you get past the draft, anything's possible. When Jack Stoll, I believe, will be their third tight end, and I believe will be on the roster. I'm saying this in June, by the way. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Today, it was Dillard and Mailata both getting an opportunity to speak. From what I understand, and I didn't hear them and see them, that saw a much more mature Andre Dillard, very much embracing this competition that he knows he's getting into. We obviously are going to have a competition here. No one's walking in as the 1A guy, right?
Yeah, it's an open competition. We are heavily believing Mailata will win it. That, if we put odds out, would be strongly in favor of Mailata, but Mailata has not started for a full season. He hasn't proven anything yet. He just shows that he's got a lot of upside. He really surprised some team observers last season, particularly against Baltimore and Pittsburgh, where most people thought he'd struggle. He actually played at a very high level. Jeff Stoutland's a believer in him, but you know what? Stoutland was the guy who was very high on Dillard. So let the best man win. Dillard's coming in with a good attitude. He's healthy, super athletic, and this is going to be one of many open competitions. Now, most competitions are for the backup jobs. A lot of backup jobs are wide open, more than we've probably seen in the last 5 years. It's actually a good thing, and the coaching is going to come into it. Moshe and I have talked a lot about Inside the Birds about how the coaches are preaching competition and accountability. That is really real here, where I think the former staff got kind of burnt out in their last year. I think from what I understand, the teaching has been very good. And this is, quite frankly, Mike, all they could do, because you can't do 7-on-7, 11-11s by the agreement with the players and the coaches here. So it's been a teaching environment here at Eagles OTAs.
The one thing I'll ask you is Dillard played right tackle and was a disaster the one time. Now we're hearing Penei Sewell coming out and saying, hey, this isn't as easy as it seems. But if Dillard doesn't win the job, he doesn't offer the versatility. I mean, so what happens then?
It's a great question. Jack Driscoll is probably their backup right tackle, Delane Johnson. But remember, a lot of it comes down to what LaRaven Clark's status. Coming back from his torn Achilles, he tore it in the first week of December. It's going to be close to being. It's going to be close for him to be ready by week 1. So, and then the other thing is you just don't know with him how he needs practice time. He needs to get on the field, so you just don't know if he'll be able to be the swing tackle. So. Look, the Eagles aren't going to trade him unless when we talk to Dillard, if he loses the job, I don't see them moving him for a 3rd-round pick. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
So I think a better chance he'll be on the team than not on the team this season. And left tackles who are talented like Dillard, they're going to have value. So that the good thing about the Eagles situation, if they don't get hurt like crazy like last season, they're legit 10 or 11 deep on the offensive line.
Agree. Adam, last but probably should be first, not least. No matter what you say, they need to find a corner. Who's on the street? What's available? Where are we there?
Well, starting the day, I had 5 corners on the list. Now there are only 4. Darqueze Dennard just signed a 1-year deal with the Cardinals, former Bengals first-round corner. So the best guys out there, Richard Sherman. The Eagles aren't on him, as I understand it. And Sherman's going to cost. The Eagles, my senses are only looking to spend $2 or $3 million. Steven Nelson's a guy that's been on the radar, but it ain't going to happen unless he's want to come down on his asking price. Rashad Breeland is really a good corner. He's had some off-the-field issues in his career. He was a starting corner for the Chiefs. The Vikings, he visited the Vikings. Drake Kirkpatrick, who another former first-round pick for the Bengals, played for the Cardinals last season, is out there. He's a little bit older, though. He turns 32, I think, this fall. And Gary Connolly, people keep asking me about him. He's no better than a 4th corner. He's a veteran minimum guy the Eagles could sign in training camp if they wanted to, but you're right, Mike. It's a major issue right now. They cannot line up. If this, I get it. We're only in June.
Yeah.
But if this happened to be week 1, we have no idea who's going to be the starting corner opposite Slay, and it cannot be Avonte Maddox. It cannot do it. He would be a good slot corner for them. And that's really the way he was drafted, to be their future slot corner. And by the way, also, he's on the final year's rookie deal. This is a big year for him.
Really interesting on that corner spot there. By the way, Pro Football Focus rated Nelson higher on their list than Slay.
Well, it's funny. If you grade them by coaching tape, right, if you talk to coaches, Steven Nelson is a better than average corner. He's a solid corner, but he's more of a number 2 corner.
Yep.
The good thing is he's only 28. He's actually younger than I thought. So you figure if they could reel him in for a year, or even 2 years, that would be great, because that way they could bring along slowly their younger corners. They don't have to rush McPherson or Josiah Scott. They don't have to rush them on the field, and that's kind of where they're at right now, corner.
Let me tell you, if they sign Steven Nelson, you're going to start to hear some people changing their expectations. I can tell you that much.
I know. I've been thinking about it, Mike. I got to be honest with you. I've said all along 6 or 7 wins. I might go 6 to 8 wins. I might change that a little bit. But again, we're on a 17-game season, folks.
That's true.
Not 16.
There's a new Inside the Birds podcast out right now that goes in depth on the Dillard, Mailata, Ertz, the tight end situation. So check that out now wherever you listen to your podcast. And, of course, Adam Caplan, like all guests. Are you doing Twitch? What do you got coming up?
Yes, tonight, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. We do thank you, Mike, because we actually picked up a couple listeners from me mentioning it here. And the good thing is it's not just Eagles. We'll take Eagles questions, of course, but we got Raider fans in there, Buccaneer fans in there. It's great. So that's 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you.
All right, check that out. And they're doing a live ITB as well. You got everything on the Inside the Birds platform. And, of course, in a condensed version here during Football at 4. Adam, take care, pal.
Thanks.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.